What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube. And today I've got another edition of The Drive-In, where I watch recently released films and tell you guys whether they're worth watching, worth waiting for, or worth skipping altogether. Today I've got the most anticipated movie, I guess, that ended the last year. It came out on Christmas, so technically it's a 2024 release, but it's the most talked about thing right now. It is one that I was almost most dreading to watch. It's a very divisive film. It's got the widest chasm of opinions of hardcore horror fans right now. I'm talking about the remake, 2024 Nosferatu. Nosferatu is a classic film that kind of kicked off bookended the silent film horror era as a staple and kicked off the Universal Monster era. The 20s version of Nosferatu, 27 I think it was. Then you've got the 70s version of Nosferatu, which was my favorite coming into this movie. And we'll talk about the reasons why I came in kind of negative and how I left the theater and the things that changed. I'm going to be totally transparent with you guys coming into the review and how I felt coming in, how I feel now. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about 2024's Nosferatu and where it stands with me. I know it is a very divisive topic on the internet. This movie was written by Henrik Green, Bram Stoker, based on Bram's material, and Robert Eggers, and directed by Eggers. You guys know Robert Eggers from a lot of films that I really, really hate. The Northman, The Lighthouse, The Witch. I cannot stand any of those movies, to be honest with you. And I've got to say, coming into this movie, Robert Eggers probably is my least favorite director in the world right now, right alongside James Wan. But at least with James Wan, I like a handful of Wan's older stuff. Robert Eggers, I've never seen a movie of his that I liked even a little bit, so that's why I was coming in a little nervous. I knew the runtime, and I knew the director, and I was like, well, I love the source material. I like both the previous two iterations of Nosferatu, so I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm going to come in open-minded, but I don't like the runtime, and I don't like the director, so let's see what happens. My opinion has changed a little bit. Don't turn the video off yet. If you guys are big Robert Eggers fans, don't turn this video off. I have a lot of good things to say. Somebody check the temperature in hell because it might have frozen over. I have a lot of good things to say about Robert Eggers in this movie. I'm going to keep this spoiler free. It just came out 2 weeks ago. This movie is starring Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu, Lily Rose Depp, Johnny Depp's daughter, as Ellen, and Nicholas Hoult as Thomas. And basically, you guys know the story. It's kind of the same story as the last two Nosferatu iterations. Man goes off to a faraway land to recruit a guy who requests that he comes to see him, help transport him back to his homeland to rent some property from him. The guy's trying to kind of close a deal to make a lot of money, but he gets sucked into Nosferatu or Count Orlok's kind of world, and all of a sudden dreams start getting taken over and this demon starts to become unleashed and become obsessed with this girl. And again, I'm trying not to spoil it and also pay homage to the original movies, but it's essentially kind of an early version of Dracula. It is a gothic vampire story. It is a period piece. It is meant to be a slow burn, but which again can play well or not so well in my personal taste. But let's get into the positives. I'm just going to say this now that we're into the part of the story. I love this movie. I absolutely love this movie, in spite of the fact that it's got a 2 hour and 12-minute runtime from a director that I've liked nothing of theirs previously. This thing is really, really good. Now I'm going to tell you why. First things first, I put long shots, big positive. This movie has probably some of the best wide shots I've ever seen in my entire life. You know what? I'm going to say the best. The wide shots to establish territory in this movie are amazing. And again, spoiler free, but there are wide shots of, Count Orlok's castle. There are wide shots of the village being desolate. There are wide shots of the ominous skies on the boat when they're coming across the boat. There are wide shots of long kind of tracking of Nosferatu, Count Orlok's fingernails coming over and darkening the town. There are wide shots of the long hallways, which you guys know I love. They use wide and long shots to establish in this movie so well and set such a visual tone that is so sharp. And I knew coming in this was going to be a beautiful movie. Robert Eggers, if nothing else, is good at establishing a certain genre and is very good at making beautiful looking films. So I knew this was going to look nice. But it doesn't look beautiful in the sense of like Midsommar or other A24 movies that are visually stunning. This movie is beautiful in a darker sense. It's got this haze over it, this fog over it. And we'll talk more about the cinematography. But right away, I've got to say, the long shots and wide shots that establish the territory and set the tone for what the town is and what the area is and how Count Orlok, Nosferatu, is making it a worse place to be, gives you an eerie sense of dread right from the beginning, and the shots in this do it so well. Next thing, reverse pans. Another camera note here. They do this thing where they are starting a shot and they kind of turn upside down and open the next shot with either reversing back to right side up or flipping the camera all the way over to set up the next shot. So the camera moves and transitions from one shot into the other. Other times, they'll pan over to try to find somebody in the shot and then pan back the other way. They won't just spin around. They'll pan one way, hold the shot, and then pan back the other way. Those are those counterclockwise moves are uncommon in film, but they're used to set up a certain style, and it really adds to this. When you know who Count Orlok is, when you know what the evil of Nosferatu is, and you're waiting for this thing to pop up at you, the tension is just there. The tension is aided by these camera shots, and it puts you into this world that feels different than any other horror film that I've seen in modern times. It really does harken back to the early Nosferatu and the really good silent stuff like Caligari of the late 20s, early 30s, and the Universal Monster era, where the ambiance, the environment, the darkness of the clouds, the trees, the camera panning, using trees to pan, using one shot into another to transition. The editing and the camera work together creates this environment that is so slick and so seamless that I want to give that a lot of credit. Personification of evil. They did such a nice job in making Nosferatu feel like the evilest thing in the world. This movie has done the best job at hyping up its antagonist since 1978 Halloween. You guys know I've talked about why I love Halloween so much and how they made the shape feel so evil, and Michael Myers just standing there and Loomis talking about the blackest of eyes, the devil's eyes. He's evil. He's not a man. He's evil on two legs. They use the combination of the dread of Michael Myers and the dark shots of the town and the talking of Sam Loomis, the soothsayer, to make Michael Myers feel like the evilest thing in the world. I have not seen this done as well since Halloween until now. They do such a good job with Willem Dafoe's character and Lily Rose Depp's character and Nicholas Holt's character at talking about what this evil is, what Nosferatu is, the evilness of this demon, what they've seen in their dreams, what they've seen in their real life, how their real life encounters with him has caused their dreams and caused their psychosis and made their minds go crazy and made them unable to sleep and made them no longer in control of their lives. They've hyped up this demon so well with the people of the town and the doctors talking about him and the characters after they've seen him. The way they encapsulate what he is just beautiful. There's two scenes in particular. One scene with Willem Dafoe and Lily Rose Depp, and one scene with Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp, where they talk about what Nosferatu is, and they show the kind of possession and the hold he has over these characters, and how he's changed their lives once they've seen him. Merely laying eyes on this person and being in their crypt and being amongst their evil has made these people lose grips on their sanity and lose control over their bodies. And that is such a beautiful way to create a dark and dangerous antagonist. They've done this haunting thing in a way that pays homage to the original in the 20s and 30s and has that old school style, but also makes it feel like a modern day shape, like a slasher, but a slow burn slasher. Really, just the personification of evil couldn't have been done any better. Tension is obvious here. I've already talked about how they've talked about the character, hyped him up, the editing, the camera work, the overall location of the town and how they choose to shoot it and how they choose to color it. All that together makes this a very, very tense movie. There's one particular scene when they finally unveil Orlok, and I'll talk about that in a second as well, but they finally unveil. I keep going back and forth between calling him Orlok and Nosferatu. It's the same person. When they finally unveil Orlok, and you see what he is, that is so tense and made me jump so many times. And again, I saw this with my buddy Stu. Shout out to Stuart, who loved this movie and told me to see it with him in IMAX. Saw it with a nice loud sound and the big screen, which makes this a better experience, makes it a lot better for me. But those moments of tension made me jump so much. The sound design, the loud noises, the pure standing still and waiting for something to happen is done so well. The tension in this is top notch. I want to talk about real quick the way they chose to shoot Nosferatu. They shoot him straight on. You see him straight on for a lot of the early stuff in the movie when you first see him, but he's lit so dimly and darkly that you can't really see his face. They're not hiding him. They're looking right at him, but you can't see him. They're making you wait for it. They want you to watch him closely, to wait to see him, because the scene when they unveil him is horrifying. It's horrifying, and he feels larger than life, and they've hyped him up so well that the camera work manages to shoot him in plain sight, and you don't know what you're looking at until you see it, and then you go, oh shit. So beautiful job there. Desaturated look of the town. Again, I praised A24 and Eggers. The biggest positives to their work in the past for me are how beautifully saturated and colorful and just atmospheric their wonderfully color graded vibes are. This is the opposite. This is a desaturated, foggy London old school period feel, which normally doesn't land for me. But that I think is the best part of The Witch, and I think it is a very good part of this movie. The desaturation of it, how the haze over the town gives it an old Gothic feel, and it really makes you kind of curious as to what the town is. And every time they transition to another part of the town, when you get those wide shots of the trees and the buildings, it really puts you in the right place and frame of mind. Next positive. We're still in the positives here. Taking risks. They took some risks with some scenes in this film. There's some sexualized stuff with Lily Rose Depp. There's some possession stuff they took pretty far, which I liked. There's some triggers in this movie. They're not going to be for everyone. I guess that could be a positive / negative. There are some triggers in this movie. I can't spoil what they are because that'll spoil scenes in the movie. But let's just say that there are some things with animals and children in this movie that you don't normally see on screen. They either avoid them usually altogether, or they avoid them being on screen and they happen just off screen. They usually intimate what's happening. Not this movie. This movie shows you flat on what is happening and makes you horrified to watch it. There's a couple of scenes that I went, ooh, and I had to look away, not because of the gore or the gruesomeness, but because they chose to do this thing in honor of hyping up Nosferatu and his followers, his cult of people, or whatever you want to call them. They really took some care into shock value, which again, this being a slow burn and a slow-paced movie and a slow-paced IP in general, when they shock you, and the second you're about to lull yourself into sleep and you're going, okay, they could have cut this scene out, this one's a little slow, I'm starting to lull out a little bit, then something crazy happens and you go, oh crap, I gotta pay attention, I gotta follow this again, because it puts the viewer back on track. If you're gonna have a 2 hour and 12-minute movie for a slow-paced IP, moments like this to really get you to cringe and perk up in your seat work very, very well. Lily and Orlok Bond, they added some things. Robert Eggers, with the new changes in his script to this movie, added a couple of things, and I won't give them away. But in particular, the Bond in general, they spend more time early on with Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp. They spend some time with the Ellen character, Lily Rose's character, and the job done by Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu. They spend time putting a reasoning and a bond behind Lily Rose and Bill Skarsgård. They have good chemistry together on screen, and they have a couple long scenes where they have conversations that they don't have in the original movies. They added a little extra stakes to Lily Rose and Bill Skarsgård here, and it really kind of makes the final 30 minutes really impactful every time they're on screen together, or one is kind of channeling the other. It's really, really strong. And the stuff they chose to add, the stuff that Eggers added in his acting and his directing was phenomenal. It made the IP better. And I'll just say this now while we're here. I'm a fan of the 20s version, a bigger fan of the 70s version, the Werner Herzog version. I am now by far the biggest fan of this version. This Nosferatu is the Nosferatu for me. If I was going to rewatch one, granted that the runtime is long, but this is the definitive Nosferatu for me. Robert Eggers knocked it out of the park. And I will say this while we're here too, it goes without saying, all the actors did a great job. Everyone nailed it in their roles in this. But I think in particular, and nothing against Nicholas Hoult, did a great job in this as well. very good protagonist. But Bill Skarsgård, channeling his darker version of Pennywise, his Dracula meets Pennywise here as a dark character, and Lily Rose Depp especially. What a star! Lily Rose Depp has that Isabella Gianni kind of 70s. Nosferatu and Possession star-making performance here. We know Lily Rose from like Kevin Smith movies. I think she was in Tusk. She was in like Yoga Hosier's. A couple things in the last 10 years. I think Silent Night she was in. But what a star-making performance for Lily Rose Depp. What a final girl, so to speak. Amazing performance that stands out among all else. That being said, she could only be as good as she was if the chemistry with Bill Skarsgård worked, and it did. Bill Skarsgård, once again, plays these dark character actor things so well. So the acting knocked it out of the park. The directing knocked it out of the park. Hats off. Cons. I only have 2 cons here. Number one is going to be a small one, and that's just Nosferatu's look. I didn't like it quite as much as the 20s version is my favorite, but I think out of the 3 Nosferatus, the physical version of what he looks like in this is not as good for me as the other 2 versions. People were all upset about the mustache. People were all talking about it. Who cares? I didn't care. It didn't catch my attention that much. I saw it once and I went, okay, that's different, and moved on. Who gives a shit? At the end of the day, he was larger than life. The body was cool. The prosthetic was cool. The timing on it was cool. The way he played, the facial expressions that he could use were great. Definitely not a bad version by any means, but I love the 20s version so much that that's the Nosferatu in my head of what he looks like. So I didn't like his look as much as the older one, but it's still not bad. And the big con here, my only big con, is the runtime hurts the pacing. This runs 2 hours and 12 minutes. Stop it, guys. We don't need this. It's the new trend now of making everything over 2 hours, 2.5 hours. No, we don't need that. We don't need it at all. This could have been, if this was an hour and 45 minutes, if they had shaved off a half an hour and turned some of those doctor conversations into one doctor conversation and cut some of the things out throughout. I mean, honestly, all 3 phases of the movie could have been trimmed down. If this had been a half an hour shorter and was an hour and 45, we're talking about like a 9.5 out of 10 for me, which I never give period piece slow burns a 9.5 out of 10. I only ever have liked maybe 5 or 6 of those out of the 150 I've seen. So my scale would be broken for this movie. It would be off the freaking charts perfect if this was a shorter film. The pacing is hurt by this, and there are points that I started to feel it physically and mentally. But it is such a good movie that even a 2 hour and 12 minute slow burn IP did not destroy me because of how good this movie was. So all in all, that is my take on it. Would have loved for this to be a half an hour shorter and would have been over the moon about it. I don't know that I'll own this movie. I don't even know that I'll watch it again. Had I not been talked to by a friend that loves this movie already and took me to see it in an IMAX theater where everything was accentuated and I was paying super close attention and everything was amplified, maybe I wouldn't have given this a chance and maybe I wouldn't have liked this as a home watch. But going to see this in the theaters with somebody who loved the movie and me loving the IP and seeing how well this played even for its length was freaking excellent. And I wish I had watched this last year as it came out on Christmas Day, because this would have been one of my top movies in 2024 for sure. I didn't get to put it on my list from last year because the list came out way after, and I saw this in 2025. I wish I had seen it last year because wow, is it good. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. It's only as low as an 8 because number one, the pacing and timing of how long it was, and number two, I just don't tend to give these kind of movies a very high rating, but an 8 is much higher than I usually go. 8 out of 10, and I mean that in the best possible way. Robert Eggers, Lily Rose Depp, Bill Skarsgård, you guys nailed it. Make it a little shorter next time, but you guys absolutely nailed it. Go see this in theaters if you get the chance. If you get a chance for an IMAX viewing, go watch it in IMAX because it blew my socks off, and I was coming in very negative expecting to hate it, and I was dead wrong, and I couldn't be happier to be dead wrong. What'd you guys think? Tell me in the comments down below. If you've seen the previous Nosferatus and seen this one, did you like it or not? Why or why not? Let's talk about it in the comments. Please share other videos you'd like me to review, other movies and TV series. I'm going to do the Creep tapes. I just finished the Shudder's The Creep tapes based on the Creep movies, and I'll be doing that one in the next couple days as well, plus the Steeler videos coming up. So stay tuned to my channel, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Please stay warm. It is cold out there. Take care.